Welcome to FarmLand. How will the government's new climate action plan affect dairy farms? ICMSA President Pat McCormack sets out his organisation's stance. And is there a farmer appetite to grow hemp in Ireland? Teagasc specialist Barry Caslin and businesswoman Leah Fletcher outline where they see the potential. But first, what actions are farmers expected to take under the new climate plan? Sylvester Phelan has this report.
The all-of-government Climate Action Plan, unveiled by Minister for Communications, Climate Action and the Environment Richard Bruton last week, expects to reduce carbon emissions from agriculture by 10 to 15% by 2030. Land use, agriculture and forestry together will contribute approximately 40% of the reductions in emissions being planned between now and 2030, according to the Minister. In addition, carbon taxes will quadruple from €20 per tonne to €80 per tonne by 2030 at the latest, an action anticipated to cost taxpayers €2.3 billion over the course of the next decade, with the Minister hinting that increases could start from budget 2020. Minister Bruton also noted that the Climate Action Plan will be based on principles set out in the Teagasc Climate Roadmap. These include 28 measures such as agricultural mitigation through improved breeding, changing fertiliser types and slurry spreading, land use and carbon sequestration through increased broadleaf forestry and improved pasture management, and energy efficiency and fossil fuel displacement through biofuel and anaerobic digestion. It was highlighted in particular by Minister Bruton that there is a plan to substantially increase the level of forestry planting. To meet a goal of 70% renewable source electricity by 2030, a microgeneration scheme is to be established, allowing homeowners to generate and sell electricity back to the grid. Oil boilers in all new homes will be banned by 2022, while gas boilers are expected to be axed by 2025. Objectives are also afoot to gradually equalise diesel and petrol excise rates, with the aim to bring 950,000 electric vehicles to Irish roads by 2030. While farm organisations have broadly welcomed the report, how these changes will be implemented inside the farm gate remains a considerable challenge.
We're here now with Pat McCormack, the President of the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association. Pat, thanks very much for coming into us.
Thank you, Claire.
So, Pat, last week the government launched its Climate Action Report 2019. It sets out ambitious targets for agricultural emissions to get them down by 10 to 15% by 2030. What's your response to the report initially, and is that target achievable? Is it realistic?
Well, first of all, Claire, it is a target. And I mean, agriculture is no different to any other sector or anything else in life. You must always set targets. We must go as close as we possibly can to achieving those targets. They are ambitious. There's no point in saying otherwise. There's particular elements of those targets that are ambitious. In particular, I suppose, the forestry, the expectation of the target that's out there, that we'd plant in and around 8,000 hectares of forestry per annum, when we are only at 4,500 at this point in time. So that's going to be a target that's going to be very, very ambitious to deliver on. Obviously the Teagasc Met curve is going to have a significant impact, and hopefully that will deliver, whether it's the low emission slurry spreading, the protected urea, and also EBI obviously from the dairy herd, and indeed from the beef offspring from the dairy herd as well. We saw ICBF this spring launched the beef index for the dairy herd, and we'll hope that will deliver as well to help bring down our emissions overall.
And Pat, are there concerns among your members about a possible cap on production following the implementation of this plan? Because the Minister for Agriculture has stated that farmers need to engage with this plan, or else other measures might be taken. So are you concerned about a cap on production, or that, down the line, could the dairy herd be limited? Could the national herd be limited?
Well, look, who knows? I suppose the Minister at this point in time has given a commitment that there won't be individual caps. I think that would be a retrograde step. As somebody who's not that long gone from being a young farmer, and certainly in European terms not gone from being a young farmer that long, and there's a lot of farmers out there in their 40s, but they've given the last 30 years living in the shackles of quotas. I think from an Irish dairy industry perspective, to be very, very difficult to see us go back into the shackles of an environmental restriction. So hopefully that won't happen. I think economics will dictate a lot, and I think there needs to be a huge programme out there amongst consumers, and awareness amongst consumers that we're top of the range from an animal welfare perspective, and that we're doing more and more over the last 25, 30 years. Farmers have invested significantly in their their farmyard layouts and infrastructure, obviously to become labour-wise more efficient, but to become environmentally more compatible. And that awareness needs to be out there for consumers, that all this comes at a cost for the producer, and at some point in time that the producer won't be able to withstand any more of those costs, and that the burden is going to have to be shared.
So that awareness among the consumer, is it there?
I'm afraid there's an environmental awareness there amongst the consumer, but there isn't an economic awareness, and by that I mean that they don't understand that there's a significant cost associated with being ever so compliant. I mean, is it there within Europe, Claire? We see us sitting down here today to talk about climate change and the targets and the ambitions for the future, and at the same time we have Commissioner Hogan in Europe talking about closing out a Mercosur deal with no restrictions, bringing in cheap food, and that is a huge concern, not alone for Irish beef, but indeed for European beef.
So there's massive contradictions out there, I suppose. On the ground, that's what the farmers are feeling.
Farmers are saying to me that it's hypocritical, absolutely hypocritical, that they're saying implementing one thing and agreeing a different thing in a Mercosur deal, and that has to be vetoed if necessary by our Taoiseach. And I would encourage the Minister for Agriculture to have a word in his ear, because we have the power here at home in Ireland to veto that deal.
And Pat, just back on the climate report, forestation is a big piece of the puzzle here. It's going to play a huge part. Minister Creed has said that he doesn't want the afforestation to take place in any one particular part of the country, not in areas where maybe the land is more disadvantaged. Are dairy farmers out there open to the idea of planting a section of good quality grassland, for opening that up for forestry to help get emissions down?
Well, I suppose the farmers, certainly dairy farmers, have more of a stake in the environmental ambitions than anybody else. Obviously water quality and that. Milking platform is the one restrictor for the dairy farm. So I think the vast majority of dairy farmers should be a no-go area to be planting some of that ground that's around the milking parlour for forestry. But maybe they may have marginal land, but maybe they may have a neighbour who's not as profitable as they could be in another enterprise, and maybe there's an opportunity there for farmers in less profitable and maybe age profile and all that. It might suit them. Maybe they're part-time farmers, but ultimately forestry needs to be seen as attractive. It needs to be seen as attractive financially, and it also needs to be seen as attractive long-term, because unfortunately in the past we've seen mature forestry harvested and then left to wreck and ruin for years after it.
You mentioned, Pat, about the slurry application changes there and changes in terms of fertiliser management under this new plan. How will that impact on the ground?
Well, I suppose there's a huge challenge out there, and we've seen it with irrigation farmers, for the remainder of 2019, to have the low emission slurry equipment available locally and at a time to spread the slurry for the farmers. Obviously, it can have a significant impact. There's 2,500, maybe nearer to 3,000 applications gone through the Hemp scheme now. But if the government had to be serious about it, I think the rate of grant aid should be increased to 60%, because those spreaders are twice the cost of a conventional spreader for the farmer, and to make them viable for the farmer as well as the contractor. Protected urea. We've been lobbying co-ops, obviously, on mill price. It's the number one for ICMSA, but after that, it's environmental issues, and that all those co-ops and various different fertiliser suppliers would have in stock the protected urea at a competitive price. That's to be a critical part of it as well, because in some areas it's not made available to farmers.
Pat, finally, the carbon tax, the government has said that is going to be increased from €20 per tonne up to €80 per tonne by 2030, where there's an equalisation on duties on petrol and diesel, a ban on diesel cars coming down the line. That's all going to have indirect impacts on farmers. Does the ICMSA accept the government's position on those issues, and what's the ICMSA going to do about it?
Well, we're going to lobby very, very strongly that farmers and rural people need their diesel cars. They need, to be in a position to take stock to the factory, to go to the co-op, and they need to have power in their engine. That's not available in the alternatives, unfortunately. The sustainability of the charge on the battery, from what I've heard from the experts, wouldn't maintain over a period of time. What we would be looking for though is that the microenergy would be encouraged and promoted in the budget 2020, which is coming up in the autumn, where solar panels, for example, would be a viable option on the sheds and infrastructure that are out there in the farmyards of rural Ireland. And 'tis initiatives like that that may make farm families viable in the years ahead.
Pat, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. And now Wicklow farmer Ed Hanbridge has integrated the hemp crop onto his farm down in Baltinglass. Niall Claffey has this report.
Edward Hanbridge is an organic beef and sheep farmer in County Wicklow. After a period working away from the family farm, Edward returned home, and in 2015 the farm took a step in a unique direction. A crop of hemp was sown. When AgriLand caught up with Edward, he explained exactly what it takes to grow this crop.
We're cattle and sheep here. I would never have been a tillage farmer, but so far I have found it quite easy enough now to grow it. It's plough, till, sow and close the gate. You'd be sown in May once the temperatures get up. You want to be getting them up to that 10 degrees. But you want a fine seed bed. So ploughing, what I do is I ploughed it, I rolled it, I power harrowed it twice and sowed it and rolled it again. And then you just close the gate because you don't need your sprays. Once it gets established, it grows that quick that it gets up above any of the weeds. This year on the farm, there's about 40 acres. The first year I grew it, I had 7, and then I cut it back to 3, and then I went to 5, and then I went to 10, and now I'm on 40. This variety is the Finola. So Finola will get to a sort of a 4 to 5 foot. There is varieties out there that will get to 18 foot.
Edward, who offers advice about the crop through Hemp Ireland, also outlined how it is harvested.
For the seed, you would use a combine. An ordinary combine is able to handle it, no hassle. You'd come in, you'd want to be lifting it up a little bit, just not taking in too much of the fibres, because those fibres are ridiculously strong, that they can get lapped up a little bit, but lift it up a little bit and there's no hassle. Then you're getting the head of the plant then where all the seed is. Now it doesn't come in all at the one time. It's just the nature of the plant that all of the seed doesn't come in at the one time. So once you have between sort of 70 and 80% of the seed ripe, that's when you're going in to cut it.
Once harvested, the seed is dried from a moisture content of approximately 20% to below 8%.
Bringing it up to Irish Health Oils. So Luke McGuinness is the owner of it. He's up in Ashburn and he was cold pressing it. So he was cold pressing the seed into an oil, and then it was being distributed, using for putting on salads, in pestos, hummus. It's the best food for human consumption that there is out there because it's so balanced.
While Edward discussed the endless possibilities achievable from various parts of a hemp crop, he had the following advice for farmers.
I would say to start small, that because we're very early still, so markets are only being developed. So I wouldn't advise anyone going too big. It's the downfall of everyone, isn't it, going too big too quick. So start small, see how you like the crop, see how it fits into your rotation. You have to look at who is going to be buying that crop off of you. And that's what we have to work on now. That yes, it has all of these applications, but to process it, those processors are not there. So this is why we have to go to the government now and say, look, give us a few pound, we'll get this going, and then we'll have somewhere for the farmers to bring their crop. So there is small farmers, small processors being set up, but it's cottage industry at the minute because there's no Irish seed there. Like we're with the co-op now, with the Hemp Cooperative of Ireland, we're able to sort of dictate the price. That we're at a stage now where the farmers are able to dictate the price, and that doesn't usually happen. So I'm saying like that the farmer has to get €1,500 a tonne for his seed, and at that then you're making a few pound on it. You're making more than anything else. So it's the seed is where I'd start, just because that market is moving that bit quicker. It should be easier to sell the seed. The inflorescence, the flowers, that is very, very lucrative. But that's where the controversy and the grey area is.
In addition, farmers who want to grow a hemp crop must obtain a licence before doing so.
You have to get a licence every year. You apply to the HPRA, which is the Health Products Regulatory Authority. You get the application form from them, and they will want to know where is the field, who's going to be buying it, what variety are you sowing, and that's more or less it.
We're joined now by Leah Fletcher, the co-founder of Danu, a company that processes and manufactures hemp in Ireland. We're also joined by Barry Caslin, specialist in energy and rural development at Teagasc. Thank you both for coming into us. Barry, starting with yourself, Teagasc have been involved in research into hemp production since the 1960s. Ed has outlined there that there are a number of components to the plant itself. Can you just outline exactly what is the hemp plant and what are the products that can be made from it?
Yeah, the Latin name for hemp is Cannabis sativa, and it has been grown in Teagasc, as you say, since the 60s, and industrial hemp varieties. So industrial hemp has a THC, or a tetrahydrocannabidiol, content of less than 0.2%. So that means it doesn't contain the psychoactive component, and it's legally allowed to be grown. So you have to get a license from the HPRA in order to grow it. That's the Health Products Regulatory Authority. There's different components to hemp that can be produced from a farmer's perspective. You can produce cannabinoids, which can be used to produce CBD oil, and there's an extraction process required there to extract CBD oil from the leaf or from the seed. You can also produce seed, and that seed can be crushed to produce hemp oil, which is high in the omega-3, 6 and 9, a very healthy oil. And then you can also produce the fibre. And the fibre can be used for everything from insulation material, it can be used for biocomposites, even producing bioplastics. So there's a wide variety of components. There's about 50,000 different products that can be produced from hemp. And I think that if we can even focus in on 5 of those today, there's a lot of high value products such as biodegradable plastic, such as insulation material that we can produce and generate income for farmers in rural areas.
So Barry, how many hemp farmers are there in Ireland at the moment, and what is the bit that's making money for them?
There's about 370 hectares that have been licensed by the HPRA, the Health Products Regulatory Authority, this year in 2019, and the figures are increasing every year. Most of it's been used for mainly for seed production and crushing the seed to produce this omega-3, 6 and 9 healthy oil. But that is going to change in the future. There will be opportunities for extraction of the CBD from the seed and also from the leaf. So we are going to see other opportunities there in the near future. In relation to the fibre, there's less opportunities there because we do need processing facilities or infrastructure in order to process the fibre. And that's what's needed there is a decortification plant to separate out the fibres, the shivs, the herds, and the dust that can produce that high value material for insulation or biocomposites. Like if you take even the likes of BMW and a lot of the big car manufacturers, they're already looking for hemp material to use in the cars, in the panels and dashes of their cars. It can also be used to produce a hempcrete. So you mix lime with the shivs, and you produce hempcrete that can be used in the building and construction industry, a much lower carbon footprint than you would have in using concrete.
And just what about growing the plant in Ireland? Is it easy to grow here? What about the inputs involved? Is the Irish environment a good environment for it to grow in?
Yeah, the crop is set around April, May, that time of the year. You want to get it in before the last, or just after the frost. But it grows very, very rapidly. And what we found is there's no need for any pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides with the crop, because it gets ahead of any weeds very, very quickly. So it's a very vigorous type of crop. It grows to, there's tall varieties that grow up to 12, 14 foot in height, the smaller varieties that go up to 6 foot in height that you would produce seed from. The taller varieties are mostly associated with fibre production. It would yield anywhere from 10 to 12 tonne of dry matter per hectare per year. It's an annual crop, so it's only set once, and then it's in April, May, and it's harvested around September, that time of the year. So as Ed was saying in the intro there, it's harvested for the seed with a Kemper header, with an ordinary combine harvester to harvest the seed. And then for the fibre varieties, there'll be different types of machinery that will be needed to harvest the longer, stemmier fibre varieties.
Leah, you have worked out in Canada as well in this industry. You were out there helping companies set up and creating their business plans. And then you've moved back here, and you could tell us about your company here. But first off, can you just outline kind of the global marketplace out there at the moment for hemp at an industrial scale?
Yeah, sure. Well, hemp really came online because medical cannabis came online and the international trend moved from cannabis and people saw value in hemp. And with conversations hot about circular economies, bioeconomies, the environment, hemp really offers an awful lot of solutions. It's a great plant for sequestering carbon. There's numerous end uses. Therefore, there's countries all over the world coming online pushing hemp.
Yeah, so the barriers seem to be coming down even in the US.
Yes.
There was legislation passed there in the Farm Bill last year. So, and they're saying that's a very lucrative market at
Yes.
22 billion could be made from it by 2022. So globally, the opportunity is opening up for this area. Is that something Ireland can capitalise on?
Oh, definitely. With Ireland and our history internationally as an agricultural island and an island where people have trusted for products. You know, our brands are globally recognised. And for us to be able to come online with Irish hemp, it's a great opportunity. It's fantastic.
And so you're set up now down in Westmeath. You have a laboratory down there where you're manufacturing and processing hemp. How many farmers are you working with at the moment? Are you contracting?
This year we have 9 contracted farmers in total. We basically are still in the process of setting up infrastructure. There is an awful lot needed, as Barry said. We want to make sure that those farmers are supported with the infrastructure and education pieces that are involved. Next year we're looking to expand to an awful lot more. As our processes are put in place and as we develop our markets, we'll need more and more.
So Leah, a lot of farmers, anyone who's been interested in this and possibly diversifying into this space, what kind of return can be made from getting into this area?
Depending on the end use and what markets are available, you're looking anywhere from 1,500 to 4,000 euro an acre for basically just the top part of the plant, that is, so the leaf, the flower, the seed. And that's pretty good in comparison to some of the other options that are out there.
Barry, coming in on that, look, diversification is a huge way forward now for farming, and we saw with the National Farm Survey from Teagasc recently the state of incomes at the moment, and the outlook isn't, you know, it's mixed, it's uncertain, these buzzwords thrown around the place. But at the same time, I suppose the challenge with maybe going into hemp production, people might think back to miscanthus and willow back about 10 years ago, and that didn't really develop as was hoped at the time, and even though there was government support behind it. So why is there kind of a reluctance there among the farmer, do you think, to really expand into this area?
I suppose the fear of failure is why a lot of people don't want to, I suppose, engage in a new area. But I think there's a lot of people, I found even since last Friday's conference, there's an awful lot of people that are inquiring about the option of growing hemp on a contract basis for potential processors here in Ireland. So I mean, there's a great momentum. As you say, there's farmers are looking for land use alternatives. We have 16% of the land area of Ireland that is controlled by 40,000 farmers who have a standard output of less than 8,000 euro per year. And then within the National Farm Survey, you have about a third of those farmers who are not viable. You have the middle third who are sustainable because maybe they have an off-farm income. So there's a lot of farmers within Ireland who are really genuinely looking for land use alternatives. As Leah mentioned, supports are going to be needed to get the infrastructure in place, to get the processing facilities in place. I think the momentum is there, certainly, especially with the younger farmers, people who have inherited a farm of land, looking to see what can they do with that farm of land to turn a shilling for themselves, that they can actually make a good viable income, and that's going to support them and their families to stay in rural areas. That's the biggest challenge we have at the moment, is how do we encourage young people to stay in a rural area? It's different diversifications, as we spoke about before, with agri-tourism and artisan food production, but this is something new and novel. This is a new opportunity that we haven't, there's a global demand, as Leah mentioned, for various products that can be produced from hemp. It can tick so many boxes in terms of construction industry, greenhouse gas abatement. So I think with a little bit more initiative and some more supports to develop the sector, I think we will see a massive increase in this area.
And Teagasc and the IFA, yourself, Leah, you're involved in this. There's a hemp working group out there at the moment. Leah, what is that group driving at the minute? Are you engaging with government? What are you looking for?
Well, we started off just putting forward just the message behind hemp and starting conversations around hemp. We held a conference last week in Teagasc. And moving forward, we're going to be discussing policy and how we can make little changes that would have an enormous impact for farmers around the country. Particularly around organic schemes and payments for organic schemes, and licensing, making the licensing applications more streamlined, stuff like that really.
And finally, Barry, there is another element to this in terms of rural jobs and rural employment that could come from that industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I suppose that conference last week as well was really trying to move the taboo around the whole area of hemp. Like a lot of people would associate the crop with it is linked to the cannabis plant, but the varieties we're talking about again is the non-psychoactive varieties. But yes, job creation potential is massive in this area. We heard from one of the speakers at the conference the last day that there's potential for 80,000 jobs in the short term from hemp in various areas, for whether that's on the fibre side, whether it's in the also in the seed side. So the opportunities will emerge very, very quickly, I think, because the global demand is escalating at a rapid scale.
We'll leave it there. Thank you both very much for joining us, and we'll be watching that space closely. Thank you also at home for watching us. If you have any comments or feedback, you can reach out to us on any of our platforms or our social media channels. We'll be back again next week. See you then.